Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Rizka for providing the grant that partially funded this concert experience, and thank you to the many listeners who've chipped in and supported Common Fence Music in their efforts to support musicians like myself. I'm going to move this a little bit so you can see my face a little bit better. Goodbye, my little love. Some of these days at your gate, I go home, whiskey straight, round old house, quiet as a mouse. Some of these days I lay down with your star all night long, freeze to death, Lord, Lord. Woo! Goodbye, my little love. Mom and Papa told me, go on, boy, county farm, be your home, Lord, Lord. Well, thank you all for tuning in, those of you who are here. I'm sure some more folks will be joining us as time goes on. My name is Jake Blount. I am a resident of Providence, Rhode Island, recent transplant. I moved here just before the pandemic hit and haven't really had that much of a chance to do anything here in Rhode Island. But one of the few things I did get to do was a live show at Common Fence Music, which was my last performance before all of my work got canceled forever. So thank you, Common Fence, for having me back. It is super exciting to be working with you again. I love the way you support local artists, and I'm happy to be a part of your programming. Well, that last song was called Brown Skin Baby, and I learned it from a recording of a fiddler named Jabe Dillon, who lived in Mississippi. And he learned that tune from a black fiddler by the name of Old Dennis. Most of what I do is digging out old tunes and songs from Black and Native American musicians, mostly from the Southeast, and performing that music. So that was a really fun little research project for me. If you couldn't tell, there's not very much of a structure to that tune. I sort of had to parse out his different parts and variations on the parts and put them together in a way that felt okay. And I love how it came out. It's a really fun song to play. This next one is called Roustabout. It will be called Roustabout. Many things changed when I moved from my hometown of Washington, D.C. up here to Rhode Island. One thing that did not change is the humidity. This is Roustabout from Dink Roberts of Haw River, North Carolina. Where you gone, you? Roustabout. Where you go fishing? When you go fishing, tie a hook and line. When you go courting, court the willing mind. Oh, it's been years since I've been gone. Great little boy with a red dress on. Whew. All right, a little tuning project here. For those who are unfamiliar with old-time music, oftentimes we change tunings between different keys and sometimes even just different songs to get different sounds out of our instruments. So I'm doing that right now with my fiddle. Boll Weevil told the farmer, "You better treat me right. I'll eat up all your cotton, sleep in your grain race tonight." Boll Weevil told the farmer, "You don't need no Ford machine. I'll eat up all your cotton, can't buy no gasoline." I don't see no water, but I'm about to drown. Oh, I don't see no fire, but I'm burning down. Yonder comes a spider, crawling up and down the wall. He must have been gone, get his hashes home. Boll Weevil told the farmer, "You better treat me right. I'll eat up all your cotton, sleep in your grain race tonight." Boll Weevil from Tommy Jarrell. I'm going to preemptively retune for the next one. Well, I mentioned that last one was called Boll Weevil, and I learned it from a recording of an old man named Tommy Jarrell, who passed away many years ago, but lived in Toast, North Carolina, and is sort of regarded as the godfather of old-time fiddle. And Tommy learned several of his tunes from black musicians that he didn't credit by name, the way he often would credit his white teachers. And Boll Weevil is just one of those. I've heard that he learned it backstage at a festival from a black woman that he heard singing it there, which rings true for me since it was such a common tune at one point amongst black musicians in the Southeast, presumably throughout the South, since the Boll Weevil hit everywhere. But it's set to a tune called, the tune of a song called Raleigh and Spencer also, that Tommy played in the same tuning, all of that. that he learned from a black man who would walk by his house singing every morning. And it's just a nice encapsulation of the way that this tradition has changed hands, and that there were people of different races and different classes and all of that learning from one another in the Southeast, and also a good encapsulation of the ways the other injustices native to the area were sort of baked into that process. That even though these people were learning from one another, it wasn't just magically we're all friends here. There was still some shady business happening. And because of some of that shady business, a lot of the songs and the tunes in the black folk tradition that I like to study come in sort of double meanings. That these are folks who are trying to explain their life experiences and the way that they felt and the things that they saw and heard and lived through, but they weren't necessarily able to express those things in plain speech. Black people at the time, of course, being subject to horrific penalties if they spoke their mind in a way that was deemed disrespectful or ungrateful. So, a lot of our spirituals, a lot of our blues are about more than the lyrics necessarily say. And this next song is my favorite example of that. It's from an old collection of slave spirituals, and I believe it was collected by John Wesley Work II, perhaps the third. Both of them worked in folklore, and I haven't introduced this song in long enough that I've forgotten which one it was. But he went to Columbia and did his master's thesis on folklore, and specifically folk tunes from black communities, which is really cool. We don't often see black scholars being the ones to collect this music. This is called The Angels Done Bowed Down. 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 Whoa, yes, my Lord. When Jesus was hanging up on the cross, the angels kept silent till God went off. Then the angels hung their harps on the willow trees to give satisfaction till God was pleased. The angels done bowed down. The angels done bowed down. The angels done bowed down. Whoa, yes, my Lord. His soul went up on a pillar of cloud, and when he moved, Lord, the heavens did bow. Jehovah's sword was at his side. On the empty air he be gone to ride. The angels done bowed down. The angels done bowed down. The angels done bowed down. Whoa, yes, my Lord. Go down, angels, to the flood. Blow out the sun, turn the moon into blood. Come back, angels, bolt the door. The time that's been will be no more. The angels done bowed down. The angels done bowed down. The angels done bowed down. Whoa, yes, my Lord. Well, I have to give a quick shout out today to Eastside Urgent Care. I came down with a viral respiratory infection of unknown description, but presumable description, in mid-March. And my lungs have kind of not been right ever since. And I haven't really been able to get in to see anybody about it because doctors are the most overworked at the moment. I finally got an appointment today, and I got some medicine, and I feel like I have my voice back for the first time in 5 months. It's pretty great. trying to keep track of some of the comments here as I go. Hi, Michelle. This is a fiddle made by Nathaniel Rowan, who lives in Putney, Vermont. He makes some pretty cool instruments. I think mine is the best, but everyone thinks theirs is the best because they kind of sound like the people who play them. He made it for me just a couple years ago, but it's yeah, it's mine. I love it very much. Has 5 strings, and I tune it weird a lot, so if it sounded funny, that's probably why. This next one, ooh, I just spilled water everywhere. I'm gonna have to deal with that later. This next one is called Goodbye, Honey, You Call That Gone, from Lucius Smith of Sardis, Mississippi. Cool. Well, I'm gonna discreetly mop up some water. That wasn't that discreet. That last one is one of my favorite tunes. It's the opening tune on my album Spider Tales that came out on May 29th on Free Dirt Records and Service Company. It's my first full-length album. I'm super proud of how it came out. I got to work with some of my all-time musical heroes, Tatiana Hargraves on fiddle, Nick Garris on feet on that last one. We do that as a percussive dance and banjo duet. My friend Rachel Eddy played guitar. Hazelden Siako played bass, and Jeff Klaus and Judy Hyman of the Horseflies produced it. It was a blast to make, and I'm super excited about the reception that it's gotten. Actually, all of the songs that I have played so far are on that album, so if you've enjoyed any of them, you might want to go check it out. Do a little tuning check here. Well, this next one is one of my favorites to play. I got to work it up a little bit with my duo, Tui, right before this pandemic hit. We played it maybe 3 times down in Tennessee, and we went and toured down to Nashville in February. And now we haven't seen each other in months, and who knows when we're going to get the chance to reunite. So I've been playing it on my own a little bit. It's called Do Remember Me, and I originally learned it from this book of manuscript recordings, sheet music, from John and Alan Lomax, who, for the unfamiliar, were a father-son folklorist duo that went all around the country collecting songs. And there are a lot of comments to be made about the ethics involved and how they treated the people whose music they took. But for now, I will just say I appreciated the opportunity to learn this song from them because it's the only song that I have taken to my grandparents who live down on the old family farm in southeastern Virginia and had them immediately start singing along because they already knew the song. I've always kind of dreamed about that happening, and this is the one. So my grandfather said that's one of the old songs. That's Do Remember Me. When my blood runs chilly and cold, I've got to go, I've got to go, I've got to go. When my blood runs chilly and cold, I've got to go, way beyond the moon. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, remember me. Got a mother in the Beulah land. She's calling to me. She's calling to me. She's calling to me. Got a mother in the Beulah land. She's calling to me. Way beyond the moon. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, remember me. You can't wear no crosses, you can't wear no crown. You can't bear no crosses, you can't wear no crown. If you can't bear no crosses, you can't wear no crown. Way beyond the moon. The harder your crosses, the brighter your crown. The harder your crosses, the brighter your crown. The harder your crosses, the brighter your crown. Way beyond the moon. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, do remember me. Do Lord, do was Do Remember Me. Some valuable lessons there for this time in which every single one of us is carrying some type of cross, as it were. Thanks, Noreen and David. I appreciate it. Sorry, having some tuner difficulties. All right, my bad. My boy, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? In the pines where the sun don't ever shine, I would shiver the whole night through. My boy, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. In the pines where the sun don't ever shine, I would shiver the whole night through. His husband was a hard-working man, about a mile and a half from here. mile and a half from town. My boy, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? In the pines where the sun don't ever shine, would shiver the whole night through. That was Where Did You Sleep Last Night from Hudie Ledbetter, better known as Leadbelly. All right. This next one's a relatively new one to me. It's called Little Birdie, and it comes from a Kentucky banjo player named Morgan Sexton. Hey little birdie, what makes you fly so high? My true love, he left me to live up in the sky. Hey little birdie, where you been so long? Getting hot in this room. I blasted the AC up until I started, but to no avail. I wonder where is my brother gone? I wonder where is my brother John? He's gone to the wilderness, ain't coming no more. I wonder where will I lay down? I wonder where will I lay down? In some lonesome dark place, Lord, down under the ground. I wonder where is my brother gone? I wonder where is my brother John? He's gone to the wilderness, ain't coming no more. I wonder where will I lay down? In some lonesome dark place, Lord, down under the ground. Well, that was a song called I Wonder Where Is My Brother Gone by Annie Grace Horn Dodson, or from Annie Grace Horn Dodson. She didn't write it. Hi, Jerry. Thanks for tuning in. This next tune is one that's pretty new, actually. One of my dear friends and teachers, and one of the producers of my album, Judy Hyman, wrote this tune. It's called "Beyond This Wall," and Judy wrote it, and her husband named it after the inscription on the wall of a concentration camp. And I wanted to record that tune, and I want to play it now for a couple of different reasons, but chiefly because walls are once again at the forefront of our socio-political discourse, and largely for the same reasons. And I think this tune is a worthy reminder of exactly what type of person wants to build walls and what happens to the walls and the people in the end. I've got a couple more for you. This next one is called Old Timey Gray Eagle, and it comes from a Cherokee fiddler named Manco Sneed, who was part of a large fiddlin' family, one of four brothers, Manco, Osco, Pico, and Campbell. Or Campbell. Pause for siren. hope everyone is fine. Old-timey Grey Eagle. And that tune is also on my latest album, Spider Tales, available now on Free Dirt Records and Service Company, and wherever you buy your music. It's been kind of fun lately. People have really gotten started talking about streaming and how little it pays artists, and in particular how little Spotify pays artists. And their CEO recently put out an incredibly tone-deaf statement about how it's our fault for not making enough music to suit his platform's inclination to pay us 0.04 cents. I find this ridiculous. Personally, I would hope that you would too. And I just want to let you all know that there is a Black-owned, artist-owned streaming service called Tidal that pays artists 3 times as much and has a high-fidelity listening option. They are not paying me to say that, but it seems to be on a lot of people's minds these days. And I just want to let people know there are better options for you and for me. I've got one more for you. This one is called Cuckoo Bird, and I learned it from a recording of a black banjo player by the name of Rufus Casey. I played it with my duo Tui as part of the band for the Revels, the Cambridge Revels, up in Cambridge this past Christmas, which has turned into a very fond and oft look back on memory for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Rufus Casey's Cuckoo Bird. And before I start, I should remind you all, there is a little interview video with me that I think is up on the Common Fence Music Facebook page for you to check out. I believe it's called Musical Journeys. I had a really good time talking with Tom for that, and I hope that you find some value in the video should you choose to watch it. For now, thank you so much. Thanks to Common Fence Music for having me. Thanks to everybody who tuned in, and hope to see you again soon. If you go to my website, jakeblunt.com, you can find a list of my streaming shows, which are petering out for a little bit because I'm going on vacation, but they will be starting up again. You can sign up for my mailing list at the bottom of any page of my website. You can also find links to purchase my album there. Oh, the cuckoo, fine bird, she warbles as she flies. She never holler cuckoo till the 4th day of July. I've gambled in England, I've gambled in Spain. I bet you $5 I'll beat you next game. Gonna build me a log cabin on a mountain so high, so I can see my Willie as he goes passing by. Young Willie, he's my darling. Young Willie, he's my man. Young Willie, he's my darling. Young Willie, he's my man. Thank you so much, Common Fence Music. Thank you to the audience. Thank you, everybody. This has been super fun. Can't wait to do it again. Don't forget to go on my website, sign up for my mailing list to find out when I'll be performing again. I got some new exciting projects in the work that I cannot wait to tell you about, but cannot tell you about yet. So please stay tuned. Thank you again for tuning in, and I wish you all a good Sunday night.
Good day to all you friends of folk music, and welcome to Common Fence Music's Musical Journeys. My name is Tom Perrotti, Education and Community Outreach Director. Today I am pleased to be talking to Jake Blount, an award-winning banjoist, fiddler, singer, and scholar, originally from the Washington, D.C. area and presently based in Providence, Rhode Island. Although he is proficient in multiple performance styles, he specializes in the music of Black and Indigenous communities in the southeastern United States and in the regional style of Ithaca, New York. A versatile performer, Blount interpolates blues, bluegrass, and spirituals into the old-time string band tradition he belongs to. He foregrounds the experience of queer people and people of color in his work. Blount has shared his music and research at the Smithsonian Institution, Yale University, and Berklee School of Music, among other venues and institutions, including Radiolab. He regularly teaches fiddle and banjo at the Augusta Heritage Center, the Ashokan Center, and Earful of Fiddle Music and Dance Camp. Jake is a 2020 Strathmore Artist in Residence and board member of Bluegrass Pride. Welcome, Jake. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure for me. So let's start right from the very beginning. What was going on in your family's house when you were a kid? How was it that you chose music as your means of expression, your main means of expression?
I really don't know. My family is what I like to call casually musical. Everyone in the house really appreciates music, listens to a lot of it. My dad played guitar and has a great singing voice still, but nobody else took it that seriously. Everyone had sort of studied it in some capacity and chosen to go in another direction at some point in their life. And I took up electric guitar when I was 12, played in rock bands, as you do, but I never really got that into it until the end of high school. And I think for me, the big turning point there was meeting this band called Megan Jean and the KFB. They were playing in this Ethiopian restaurant down on U Street back home in DC. And I went in, they got up and started playing. It's this woman with a washboard and this guy with a banjo. And I was like, what is this going to be? I didn't come to an Ethiopian restaurant for banjo music. Still an odd pairing to my mind, but they wound up being the first musicians that I met who were not on a major label and touring on a bus and playing, you know, several hundred person shows that I would meet at the VIP table afterward, or, you know, when they were signing stuff at the merch booth. So for me, it was the meeting people who were making a life for themselves, performing their music, made me realize it kind of was an option. It wasn't just, you know, you learn to play and you hope eventually someone picks up your music. You can proactively go after it and make something of yourself, even if it's, you know, not super lucrative. It can be really rewarding. And that same night, Byrne, the banjo player in Megan Jean and the KFB, told me about the history of the banjo, where it had come from, and that was the first time I'd seen anyone play clawhammer, which is the style that I play. So it opened all of the doors at one time.
And how old were you at that point?
I was 16.
16. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the banjo at this juncture. It's with its African roots. What do you know about how it arrived in Appalachia in particular with the clawhammer style?
Oh. It is allergy season here in Rhode Island. What we know about the banjo is that it is descended from a number of different African spike lute instruments. The akonting, played by the Jola people, is cited as the major predecessor of it. Those instruments traveled either physically or in the minds of captive people to the Caribbean and eventually took on a name something like banjo in the Caribbean. I think the first written mention we have of them is from Martinique in maybe 1668 in the Black Codes that prohibited social dancing, and they mentioned something called the banza. So we have this pretty early on mention of the instrument. It made its way to the United States, was first spotted, I think, in Manhattan. That's the first written mention of it that we have, and then made its major home in the Chesapeake Bay region, which is where my ancestors were held. That was the real site of growth for the continental United States' banjo tradition, and it sort of spread west and south from there.
I always wondered, and I think I read something that that you said, but I always wondered if the syncopated clawhammer style actually came from Africa itself. But I think I read somewhere. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, it does. The clawhammer style is virtually identical to the way that people play the accounting. There are also up-picking styles of playing spiked lute instruments in Africa. Although the accounting is the one that looks the most like the banjo, probably the banjo formed out of many different people of different ethnic groups remembering many different instruments and creating something that sort of resembled all of those things. So while it could be the accounting, it could also be the halam, played by the Wolof people, who were also a highly sought after ethnic group amongst slavers in the United States. So there's some ambiguity as to which precise instrument and which precise techniques would have led to what we had today. There was a variety of different playing techniques in Africa, and there remain a variety of different playing techniques here.
And though we generally think of Appalachian culture as white, Caucasian, there were African Americans living in the hills?
Yes, absolutely. I believe the specific figure is that Appalachia was about 20% Black until the early 1900s. You'd have to check me on that, but I believe that Karen Lynn talks about it in that half barbaric twang, but we were just discussing before we started recording. There's a great deal of scholarship on the presence of Black people in Appalachia and why Black people wound up leaving. But another big way that it would have made the jump into white Appalachian communities would have probably been through minstrel shows, things like that. There was sort of a way that people got introduced to the material, although minstrel shows were mainly marketed toward the Northeast, places like Rhode Island, and toward Europe. They had a very broad cultural impact on the scale of rock and roll. And the belief is that there's probably a little bit of both things happening, that there were white folks learning directly from Black folks in their communities, and also people who went to the shows and saw the banjo there and came home and imitated it. So probably both things were going on. But again, it's one of those things, it's hard to trace exactly what the truth is, because there was no codified way of playing the banjo until the late Victorian era, when the minstrels start to say, this is stroke style banjo, that's what we play. And it looked a lot like what we now call clawhammer. And the Victorian banjo elevationists who wanted to market it to the white upper middle class invent classic banjo and are uppicking it in a style based on Spanish guitar technique. Before then, and even after then, in rural communities in the Southeast, if you listen to old source recordings, people uppicked or downpicked or did whatever they wanted. There was no rule about picking whether you were a clawhammer or a fingerstyle player. They would mix up and down picking. Everybody had their own way of doing it. It makes the old recordings impossible to learn from, but also really exciting.
Interesting. I did read somewhere, probably in that same book, or I've seen photos of English, can I call them debutantes, that were photographed with the banjo. That was a thing at one point.
Yes.
When you were coming out as a young woman, you had the banjo in your lap.
It's a pretty funny thing, that marketing campaign, right? That originally it was guitars, but then they marketed the banjo based on the fact that to play guitar properly, you had to have your legs apart. And you could with your legs crossed like a lady and still play the banjo.
Very interesting.
These instrument, and they came up with all these models like the White Lady and these tiny sizes of banjo to market to that demographic.
I never thought of that connection. Very, that's cool. Thank you. I also have to share that the minstrel show, long before I understood anything about the minstrel show, the Lions Club of Newport was keeping the minstrel show alive. They had a minstrel show at Rogers High School every year into the early 60s. And I was playing accordion at the time, not very well, but I got on stage at the Lions Club minstrel show one year and played Me and My Shadow on accordion with my Uncle Tony, who was a heck of a lot better accordion player than I was. And then they finally faded from the scene, but it took a while for them to go away completely. So in the meantime, along the way, at a certain point, you were studying with some of the modern masters of old-time music, Bruce Molsky, Judy Hyman of the Horseflies, Rhiannon Giddens, and Hubby Jenkins of Carolina Chocolate Drops. Anything you'd like to say about any of those individuals?
Yeah, well, they're all super important role models and mentors for me, even now. Judy, of course, produced my last CD along with her husband, Jeff, and Rhiannon is just like a great friend and support. And Bruce has been, fiddle hero from day one and has always made himself super accessible to me, written me recommendation letters, all of that. And I got to know all of them really through the fiddle camp scene that exists in the US, where people will travel to, in some cases, West Virginia, sometimes the Catskills, sometimes North Carolina, and you'll get the chance to sit with these people for like a week and just spend time learning from them in whatever specific skill set they have to offer you. I got lucky in that I went to college up near Ithaca, New York, where Judy Hyman lives, because she wasn't traveling and teaching as much when I was learning from her. But I got to spend a week down in Elkins, West Virginia at the Augusta Heritage Center with Rhiannon Giddens and Hubby Jenkins right when I was starting. And I think being able to interact with such well-respected and talented and really footnoted Black performers of the genre that early on in my learning process set me up so well to do, it could have been anything I wanted later, but especially what I wound up doing. Learning how to learn from the source recordings is something that you have to do as an old-time musician. And Rhiannon and Hubby taught me more of that than just about anyone else I've spent time with the exception of Tatiana Hargraves.
You spent time and had some great success at Clifftop, a place someday I will get to. I haven't yet, but in 2016, you were the first Black, and this shouldn't have been so, but you were, to win the traditional band category. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And you had some success with the banjo there as well?
Yeah, I won last summer.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And from what I know of Hamilton, it's quite a school. It's a great school. And that's where you got your ethnomusicology degree.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good spot.
So something I picked up from your website about the roots, American roots music industry. I'm going to read this. For as long as it has existed, the American roots music industry has co-opted Black music into a package to be marketed and resold, defanging or erasing perspectives deemed too threatening along the way. So you're known for resurrecting these deep musical traditions. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was really interesting for me to find out when I first started studying the history of this music is that back in the early days of the recording industry, when folks started making commercial recordings and figuring out how to sell them to people, they went to the South and recorded a lot of musicians, and they wound up marketing music as either hillbilly music or race music. And hillbilly music is the kind of stuff that I play now, which is, old-time string band stuff. And race music was blues, and jazz. And the defining feature was that race music was played by Black people and hillbilly music was played by white people. So in this moment, right, they decided this group of person is going to get paid for making this type of music and this person is not. And forced by so doing Black musicians into playing race music or not getting paid, and white musicians into playing hillbilly music or not getting paid. And there was some leeway for white musicians to cross over, and often they would use like a blackface photo for the album cover. But in those early days, they really set down this system that forced all of these genres that had once kind of been feeding into one another and existed sort of along a rough gradient, right? There wasn't a clear distinction between early country and old time and blues and early jazz. It all flowed into itself. It was one big, complicated musical landscape. And what putting money into it in that way did was force all those genres to split off into their own thing so that they could be sold more easily. And now I come into my own in this musical environment that is still shaped by that, right? And the genres still largely exist along race lines. If you look at the way the metadata is structured around the early Carolina Chocolate Drops releases, they're marketed as blues albums. So they're straight ahead string band music. And I'm not going to say that that's wrong, because like string band music can fit in a lot of different places, but I don't think it's a coincidence that they wound up there instead of country. And one of the things I see myself being able to do now that there have been folks like the Chocolate Drops to pave the way for younger Black musicians like myself in these genres, is to break down those genre categories and to take this new record I just made and say, okay, I'm going to play old time on here. I'm going to turn early blues songs into bluegrass. I'm going to turn early blues songs into bluegrass. I'm going to just take religious music and put it over string band backing. Really take that opportunity to say all of the rules that we've been taught about these genres are fake and meant to constrict us and constrict who was able to play which thing. And I see it as one of my roles now to sort of question that and say, hey, can't I do anything that I want? It's been fun.
Yes, you can. And we'll get back to Spider Tales in a moment. I wanted to talk about some of your other collaborations along the way. But a quick reference to, we had the good fortune at Common Fence Music of hosting the Ebony Hillbillies.
Oh, awesome.
That was a fabulous show. Yeah, so they took the bull by the horn.
Yes.
Yeah, I still have the t-shirt. I love those guys. But anyway, so some of your collaborations in 2017, your debut EP with Tatiana Hargraves called Reparations. Tell me a little bit about, she's a fiddle player.
Yes. So Tatiana went to college about 2 hours east of where I did. And somehow we didn't make that connection really the whole time until she wound up teaching at the same fiddle camp in Ithaca, New York, where I met Judy Hyman and made that connection. And we met there, and she found out I had some hard to come by set of field recordings that she wanted. And we had this like totally nerdy, let's trade flash drives of field recordings thing that turned into her eventually inviting me to come help with her senior thesis project, which was to sort of run a fiddle camp at her college, since she studied ethnomusicology as well and studied fiddle camps specifically. And in exchange, I invited her to come be part of my senior thesis project. And I did two, one of which was just a research paper on the Ithaca sound, and the other of which was reparations. So it was sort of a skill trade there very early on in our friendship, but we had a really good time playing together. And when I started playing gigs the next fall, Tatiana was nice enough to come along and play them with me.
Fascinating. What else can you tell us about the Ithaca sound?
It's a complicated thing to try and encapsulate in a short term, but the horseflies are definitely the epitome of it.
Ah.
It's this regional style of Southern old time music that developed up north in the early to mid 70s. There was this band called the Highwood String Band that was kind of like the hot thing back in the early 70s. They did the whole contest circuit, were kind of tearing it up all around the country, just playing contests and making a ton of money from that and being able to live on it. And they settled in Ithaca, New York, and hosted like 3 parties from 1972 to 1975. And so many people came up to visit for their parties and said, wow, this is beautiful, and there's all this land, and I can afford to buy a house here, that a ton of them wound up staying. So there's sort of this like sudden transplant of old time musicians up to Ithaca, New York. And in that isolation, because Ithaca, as I can tell you, having lived there, is very far from everything, they created their own sound. And I don't know, as an ethnomusicologist, I'm like, what do you want to study more than a whole like folk music tradition whose originators are still alive? So I got to go around and talk to everybody and interview them. I interviewed members of the Highwood String Band and the Horseflies and the Bubba George String Band. How this really syncopated, backbeat heavy, really groovy style originated, and what its defining features were. And I wrote a whole paper about it, and I definitely cannot sum up all, 40 pages or whatever it is in this interview, but it was a really fun project and definitely has had a lasting impact on how I play.
Thank you. And you've made me very curious. The first thing I need to do is to catch up with the Horseflies. So in 2018, you were in Scandinavia.
Yes.
And you released a CD with the Moose Whisperers.
Yes. So the Moose Whisperers was the band that I won Clifftop with in 2016. It was a pickup band for the contest. We got together. We had all met at Clifftop, I think a year before. And our fiddler was definitely like the driving force. He like wanted to have a contest band, so he asked me to play banjo, and he put the band together. And he just like woke up 5 minutes before the call for contest entries one morning and like walked up and wrote in some random name, which was the Moose Whisperer. And we won. So we
Great
were
name.
stuck as the Moose Whisperers.
Great name. Yeah.
And it was a really great time. I mean, winning top is like the most exciting thing you can do for an old time musician. So we were really stoked about it. And the next summer, as you do, when you win Clifftop, you get hired to perform a concert set the next summer. So we did our concert set there, and then went back to DC and recorded an album that came out the next winter while we were on tour in Scandinavia, which is where our fiddler is from. So it was a really fun time.
In that same year, you opened a number of shows for Rhiannon Giddens. And that's fabulous.
Yes.
And then you were on tour in Australia and New Zealand with Libby Whitenauer. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Close enough. And you formed a duo with Libby called Tui?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that tour, Australia and New Zealand.
So I got a call from a man named Peter Hisco, who runs a really awesome festival down in Australia called the Kelly Country Pick, where basically he said, you come down and you play our festival and we'll organize a short tour for you. And I had never been to Australia before. I'm not going to turn down a shot to go to Australia. So at the time, I was still mostly working with Tatiana, and I called her and I said, hey, are you able to go? And she had other irons in the fire at that point in time. So I was like, who's my dream. I've wanted to work with this person for years, but haven't found an excuse. And that person was Libby. So I called Libby and I was just like, hey, I know we've met like 3 times, but I think you're really awesome and we should go on tour in Australia together. And she was like, okay. So I got super lucky in, you know, getting to go on tour with this person who's like later on, you know, playing violin in Broadway productions and everything, and just has monster skills. And we wound up going around through Australia and through New Zealand a little bit, and really just talking about, you know, do we want to record some of the stuff we put together for this tour? Libby hadn't had like an old time act yet. So we decided we would go back and make a record. And we did. And it's called Pretty Little Mister. It's distributed by Free Dirt Records and Service Company. And it's been so fun to work with Libby. It's been like one of the hardest parts of this quarantine to have all the awesome stuff we had lined up for this summer sort of go by the wayside. And she lives in Nashville, so I probably won't see her for a very long time, but we're excited to get back to working together when we can.
And so we get to 2020, May 29th, and your first solo album, Spider Tales, named after Anansi, the great trickster spider of Akan mythology. Spider Tales features 14 carefully chosen tracks drawn from Blount's extensive research of Black and Indigenous mountain music. The result is an unprecedented testament of the voices paradoxically obscured, yet profoundly ingrained into the Appalachian tradition. The album's sound, I read this somewhere, is appropriately haunted. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, Spider Tales was a kind of a funny thing. I feel like it had been like simmering for a few years before it happened. It was largely made up of stuff that Tatiana and I had developed for tours that we'd done, especially that one tour opening for Rhiannon, when we really felt like we had to you know, step up our game. And yeah, it was a really fun time. We just sort of all got together in this house down in Floyd called Studio 808A that my friend Joe Bass runs. He's an engineer. It's his house. And like 5 days just like tracked and kind of did a rough mix of this album. It was a really incredible experience. I mean, everyone on the album is like one of my musical heroes. My musical heroes were producing the album and engineering the album. It was a really great time, and it gave me a chance to do a real deep dive into some of the things we've already talked about as far as the voices that got buried when the tradition got commodified and remade into something sellable. It was a really fun experience for me. I feel like it grew a lot.
Well, something else that's noted in regards to Spider Tales, I'll read again, with a history of hardship and resistance coded into the music. Spider Tales brings out Blount's own experience as an LGBTQ activist and key figure in an emerging wave of queer roots musicians. And you're on the board of Bluegrass Pride. So tell us a little bit about all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think to me, there's always been a pretty direct one-to-one relationship between the narratives of kind of oppression and discrimination that exist within the art of Southern Black communities and within queer communities today. There's a lot of commonality in those shared experiences, and I definitely felt like I tapped into that when I picked the songs that went into Spider Tales. So that was a really fun thing to be able to do. It felt like I was able to tie threads together that I've been wanting to for a while. And it sort of went along at the same time as me getting involved with Bluegrass Pride, of which I am a board member. It's this great organization, 501c3 nonprofit that exists to create and expand opportunities for LGBTQ artists in bluegrass and bluegrass adjacent genres like mine. So it's been a really really wild ride. I kind of jumped on board right as it became an independent organization. It had been part of the California Bluegrass Association, and I was one of the founding board members. And it's been really fun. It kind of grew from us having like, you know, very little in the bank and trying to figure out what we were going to make happen with it and how we could best put limited resources into play to, you know, having our Porch Pride celebration this year online because our regular Pride festivities got canceled, and finding out that we have this massive audience all across the country and able to raise so much money to help support the artists that we founded the organization for, and to be able to dedicate so much time toward things that we're working on, like the Safe Venue Directory and a bunch of other projects that we have underway. It's been super fun to watch the organization grow from this like tiny little egg to something that I feel like is really starting to take up space and be noticed by a lot of people. It's been an honor to be a part of it, and I'm super excited to see where it goes.
Thank you. So we're getting toward the end here. I'm wondering, what musical goals do you have for the future? What's your next project going to be?
My next project, I can't really talk about yet.
Oh, okay.
But, it's, yeah, something's happening. Yeah, there's some exciting stuff coming down the pipe. I've always definitely been of the mindset that I don't want to set specific goals for myself because that makes me kind of ignore unexpected opportunities that pop up along the way. So I don't know. I'm not sure what my musical goals are. I definitely think, you know, I might have a financial goal to be like making this much by next year or whatever, which of course, you know, I've had that, and then the pandemic happened, so that's out the window for the foreseeable future. But as far as the artistic vision goes, I feel like it's kind of following things as they come up. There's always a new thing I want to chase after and a new sound I want to make. So it's all about that for me.
You're on a great path. It's fabulous what you're doing. I want to interject. I want to thank Aaron Young, who was our artistic director most recently. As much as I enjoy this kind of music, I had not heard of you until she booked you for a show. So a shout out to Aaron.
Yes.
Your fellow ethno-musicologist. So what about a message to young musicians?
I would say that I didn't get good at music until I invested a lot of time in learning the history of what I was trying to do. And that to me looked like reading a lot about it, but it doesn't have to look that way to everybody. And I think depending on what genre you're in, you can just go listen to the older artists in that genre. You know, if you're in metal, chase it all the way back down to its roots and try to listen all the way across those years. The best thing you can do, I think, as an artist is learn to play within a style. And of course, because you're your own person, you'll wind up pushing on that style in some way and developing in some way. But I think that the best way we can learn is to first kind of put a bigger thing ahead of ourselves and not just follow our own compass, but to learn to do something else right first. And it's time consuming and it's frustrating and it's not always the most rewarding thing. But in the end, I think that's what made me good. Was the fact that I put in the time to really like learn how to do the old time thing right. And I'm certainly not the best at it, but I'm good at it. And it took getting to that point for me to be able to hop on to something else and be able to do it with integrity. And I think that integrity is the thing that audiences listen to and the thing other musicians listen to when they're deciding who's good and who's not. So really invest the time, develop that authentic voice, and figure out what is important to you.
Thank you. You're on a wonderful path. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks. So thank you for joining us for today's musical journey with Jake Blount, an award-winning banjoist, fiddler, singer, and scholar, presently residing in the musical state of Rhode Island and making the state even that much more musical. So whether you're strumming, picking, frailing, bowing, squeezing, or blowing, or simply tapping your toe, do it with a smile, in a fine style, and for a long while. See you next time.